You know, lately I've been thinking.
Beautiful cinematic,
cinematic, be cinematic, metaphor, cinematic,
be cinematic.
That this term cinematic has become so commonplace on YouTube and cinema, social media, everywhere. Everywhere you see the term cinematic. Buy your cinematic filters here. Get your cinematic LUTs. How do you be cinematic? This is cinematic. That is cinematic. Term is overused and also misused.
Just think back to all the best films you've ever seen. Have they looked the best, or have they moved you? Have they made you feel a certain way?
Now, for the longest while, I've had a real issue with style over substance. Now, this has all come about because of the whole idea of something being cinematic. So I'm the kind of person that likes to have a fair argument. So I want to argue for the term cinematic being used so frequently on social media and YouTube. So let me have a little think and let me make up some arguments for it. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm really struggling with this one. So I guess there are no benefits? Really? Nah, there's got to be some benefits, right? Yeah, there's got to be some benefits. I mean, surely there's got to be some sort of positivity around this whole, this term, this modern day use of the term. I mean, Google. That's what I'll do. Google. My Google search got me pretty much nowhere. So I thought, why not go out and make some cinematic images of my own? So off I went on a 3-hour drive from London to Manchester. So after a good night's sleep, I have awoken in this beautiful, beautiful location, and I am going to explore Manchester. Sunny Manchester. So very sunny, because, it's where all good things happen. Now, I've been here before, but never to this kind of degree where I'm going to explore and have a little journey around and see exactly what happens when you're in Manchester. For this exploration, to shoot some cinematic images, I took along the lovely Sasha. That photo shoot in Manchester, so why not?
Okay.
Okay, so is this cinematic? Is this location cinematic? Do you feel like this location is cinematic? Because I really do like this location. But what is this location saying? What kind of mood does it evoke when you look at it? For me, it's a gorgeous location. Cinematic? Maybe. But really, ideally, I'd like to think there's some sort of storyline to be had here. Because if I was to walk out of the scene right now, like I have done, well, what is this scene actually saying? Okay, so it's saying a few things. It's saying that there's lovely graffiti on the wall, so maybe this is an area of danger. Maybe this is an urban area, whatever urban means. Maybe it really means literally nothing. Maybe it has no meaning whatsoever. As gorgeous as it is. Now, let me show you the location from another point of view. So what about this? Is this cinematic? Do you feel this location is cinematic? Well, in my opinion, not very much. But what if for example, we were to have a storyline involving this character, and say, for example, someone was standing over here and we're having a conversation about a really underhanded drug deal, would that make the scene more cinematic? This term cinematic, when did it first come into the social consciousness? Now, many of you may think it's quite a recent term, maybe invented by social media, maybe invented by people on social media to describe the quality of an image or of a video product. I don't like calling it a video product, but you get what I mean. Because I feel the term cinematic now is used mainly to describe video content. And again, I don't like that word content, but it is kind of used to describe content of video, whether it be Instagram, whether it be TikTok, or whether it be on YouTube. Something becomes instantly cinematic based on the appraisal of that person's work. But did you know the term was actually invented in 1910? But the term feels like it's more relevant now than ever. When the term was first invented, back in 1910, in North Carolina, which is America, the term was first used in the widely published and distributed magazine called Landmark. What does that even mean? How is something cinematic? Now, the term cinema relates to this. The word cinema comes from the French word cinéma, which is short for cinématographe. The Lumiere brothers coined the term cinematographes in the 1890s. The word comes from the ancient Greek and means recording movement. Thomas Edison and the Lumiere brothers are often cited as being the creators of film, with the Lumiere brothers having their first ticketed film shown in Paris on 28th of December 1895. And from there, cinema just exploded, from black and white to color to digital to whatever it is we have now. I'll be doing a video essay on the history of film very soon. It's already in the works. But for this video, that's all we're going to need to know. Okay, so it came from Greece and France and the UK and America, and really now it means nothing. Really now it means a lot. Like, this is a lot. It means a lot on footage is basically what cinematic means, right? Is that not what it means now? A lot on footage? Or does it mean something a little more technical? Is it putting the camera at a certain angle, like I have done here? You saw the angle I had before. It wasn't great. Now I've got a bit of depth of field. Is that more cinematic? I've put myself in the first third of the rule of thirds. Is that more cinematic? Or is cinematic what you see in totality? Is it about story? I mean, some of the best films we've seen over the recent years have looked tremendous, but how many of those films would you put on your top 100 list? Or even more conclusive, how many of those films would you put on your top 10 list? And one of the best films I've personally seen over the past 12 months is a film by John Cassavetes. It's called A Woman Under the Influence. And I can tell you right now, that film is not cinematic. Now, I took it upon myself last week to watch a film called The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, which is by the same director. And I can tell you categorically that film is not cinematic. Now, I'm using that term in air quotes because I think the term cinematic to you, or maybe not to you specifically, but to a group of people nowadays, means a certain way of looking. For example, The Batman. Everyone calls that cinematic. And I'm not going to sit here and dispute whether it's cinematic or not. I think it looks fantastic. Now, to me personally, I preferred watching A Woman Under the Influence over The Batman. I found it to be more cinematic to my tastes. I can imagine being at the cinema watching that film. The shots are not particularly amazingly composed. The lighting is not particularly amazing. it just felt cinematic. It felt like something that I could get on board with. And ultimately, I'm to blame as well. Being a YouTuber myself, that means I'm probably also the issue. Now, of course, that's not the biggest problem, but it is a problem. If everyone is being cinematic, then no one's being cinematic, because when something becomes commonplace, it becomes purposeless. I'm kind of playing a visual trick on you. Now, I don't want to be one of those YouTubers who mislead you. I don't want to be one of these people that lie to you, make you feel like you're less than me or I'm talking down to you. I don't want to be those kind of YouTubers, which is what I always give you guys a choice in the comments. If you disagree with me, disagree with me. For example, I gave you a choice to tell me if you felt those films were cinematic or not. It's down to you. And we can have a discussion in the comments or on a live stream. I'm not here to preach at you, per se. I like dialogue. I do know a lot about film, but I'm sure you watching this do also know a lot about film, which is why you've come here. You're looking for some sort of confirmation bias, or maybe you're looking for an argument. But in either event, the fact is, I'm not here to trick you. I'm here to give you some facts and some opinions and let you decide what you think. But one thing I will say is that throughout these particular shots, with me sitting down here with this chair behind me and the window there, I've changed the lighting scheme now 3 times. Have you noticed that? Because I've changed it 3 times. Now, if you're engaged in this video, if you like what I'm saying, if you're liking the visuals in terms of all these clips I'm putting on screen and the text and so forth, if you're liking the video, have you noticed that I've changed the lighting scheme 3 times? Now, I haven't done that because the lighting outside has changed. I just did it because I wanted to show you that actually the only thing that really matters is what is being told. Are you engaged with it? Is it important? Now, I'm not saying that something being cinematic in terms of visuals is a bad thing. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what this video is all about. I love me a great looking film as much as the next person. But I will say this. To make a good looking film nowadays is damn easy. Now, whenever I've said this before about visual effects or acting or whatever, people have always pushed back and gone, you don't know what you're talking about. I've mentioned it many times with Steadicam shots. I've said Steadicam shots now are so much easier. Now, if you disagree with that, that's completely fine. But I can tell you as a fact that doing a Steadicam shot now is so much easier. Now, this is not even a point of contention. This is just a fact. There are many reasons why now a Steadicam is a lot easier to use. For one, cameras are a lot lighter. 2, the rigs now are a lot more technological. There's a lot more going on with the rigs. You can get your 360 gyros. The material they're made from is a lot lighter. Steadicams of the past were cumbersome. They were a new invention. They're a very new invention in film. They're not a thing that's been around for a very long time. They're a very new invention. And when they first came on the scene, you have to remember, people were working with film cameras, which are noisy and extremely heavy. And they used to only be able to shoot between 15 to 20 minutes of film footage in one go. So a film like Snake Eyes, which was shot on a Steadicam at the beginning, 20 minutes, I believe, was shot on a Steadicam, had to find ways to stitch together the shots. Whereas now, if you're a really good Steadicam operator, if you're a really good filmmaker, you can actually just film a whole film on a Steadicam. It's completely easy. It really is, because the digital camera now can film for a way longer amount of time. So you don't have to plan your shots. Now, most films that use Steadicams or use the idea of films being shot in one take do have cuts. They do have hidden cuts because, there's so many things to consider. There's things like sound, there's things like actors' performances, there's things like visual effects. So you would technically want to hide behind an actor or go behind a tree and then cut into 2 shots and turn it into something that's stitched together. So filmmaking now is much easier. For example, I'm sitting here with a really great camera that really, back in 1971, 1940, I couldn't sit at home and record myself on a camera. I'm using this mic here and I can film myself on this camera.
No problem about it. I've got a microphone on my t-shirt. Over here, I've got a projector. You know, there's technology now is wild. If I really wanted to, I could film on my Samsung. Technology is wild. Sean Baker made Tangerine purely on an iPhone. And that is factual. Filmmaking now is a lot easier. Let's not sit here and pretend that this is the greatest era of filmmaking. It's really not. Now, I'm not just saying that in terms of the films or in terms of the technology. I'm saying that in relation to just everything. And this is why I talk about the idea of cinematic. Because cinematic encompasses everything. People have hijacked the word, they've turned it into something that is to do with lights and camera movements and, you know, where an actor's place in the shot. It really isn't specifically just that one thing. There are so many things that go into something being cinematic. So does it really matter how a film looks? What if your intention is to only provide style? Does that trump substance? For me, the key thing when it comes to something being cinematic is how engaging is it? Now, the word engaging is very misleading because something can be visually engaging. And I recently, in this video, mentioned the film called Red Shoes, which is a classic from 1948. It's one of the best musicals ever made. And I do like musicals. So I think, in a way, this is a bit of a cheat code for me because I love musicals, I love visuals, I love good storylines. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I cannot remember a song from this film. I cannot remember really what the film's about, if I'm being honest with you. I think I vaguely remember, but, you know, the film kind of, in that sense, didn't really resonate with me in a way that was particularly impactful. But what it did have was really good acting. The visuals were stunning, and it all came together cohesively. Now, why is it one of the best musicals ever? Because I don't remember any of the songs. I don't remember much of the story. So why is it one of the best musicals ever? Am I prioritizing the visuals over the storyline? Well, the answer is yes, I am. Now, why is that? I believe it's because it gave me just enough storyline, just enough good acting, just enough poetry for me to stick with it. And I remember scenes very vividly. And this has got nothing to do with when I saw the film. I saw the film maybe 2 years ago. I maybe saw The Fall 4 years ago. So you could say, logically speaking, that maybe I should watch The Fall again and then I'd remember it more visually. But that's not the case because the last time I saw Memento was maybe 10 years ago. But I still remember the scenes vividly. So I really do believe that a storyline that engages you, even if it doesn't engage you all the way along the line, has more of an impact than that of a storyline that does not engage you on a cinematic level. Some of your favorite songs. I'm not talking about pop songs. I'm talking about some of your most magnificent songs. Are they not just all about style? Take Bohemian Rhapsody, for example. The lyrics really make no sense, but it does have style. And ultimately, as I said before, is that not what art is all about? Now, there's a film called The Fall, directed by a visual masterpiece filmmaker Tahsin Singh, who also made The Cell, starring Jennifer Lopez. The film The Fall is one of the best looking films, if not maybe the best looking film you will ever see in your life. If you're talking about visual poetry, this man put together a visual masterpiece. It's a fantastic looking film. It really is beautiful. There's not been a film I can think of, top of my head, that comes close. But the thing about the film is that story-wise, it falls flat. It really falls flat. Now, it's a very basic storyline. It's nothing extravagant. It's nothing particularly, if I'm being honest with you, engaging. But it is a very flat storyline. And I cannot remember for the life of me what the storyline is. And in turn, I can't remember for me what the film looks like. Now, I've just told you it's one of the best looking films I've ever seen in my whole life, but I can't remember for the life of me any scenes that particularly stand out top of my head. I remember there being, I think, a ball, maybe a bridge. I think it starts off with a car crash on a bridge. I believe there's some scenes in the hospital. I think there's a really good transition in the sand. I'm picking out moments, but I can't remember for the life of me a visual moment from the film cohesively. Like, if I can't sit here and go, this specific moment happened here with this amazing shot. Now, I think that's down to the storyline being so blah. If you said to me to pick out a moment in Memento, I could, top of my head, bring out a moment for you that I think is sensational. And again, it's nothing to do with the visuals. However, the storyline adds to the visuals. And the reason why I say that is because if you are engaged in the film, you will remember the visuals for sure. If you're not engaged in the film, you're hardly going to remember the visuals. And I don't know if you guys agree with that or disagree with that. You can let me know in the comments. But I have always felt that way about film. This is why some of those films from my childhood that I love, that I know are trash, like Grease 2, for example, I still remember vividly these incredibly cheesy, terrible moments. You know, the song in the bowling alley, the song when the male protagonist, rides his bike off a cliff. I can't remember if it's a cliff or not. I remember Michelle Pfeiffer on a ladder. Like, I remember these moments vividly. And that film is trash. And I will defend that film to the hilt. I really will, because it's part of my childhood. But I know it's crap. But I do remember the film visually. Now, for me, the idea of cinema is based on a few factors. It's based on storyline. It is based on visuals to a certain degree. And it's also based on sound and dialogue and acting. You know, all the elements that make a film. To me, it's a complete package. But I think the most important thing is how well a film engages you. If the film has a poor plot, if it has poor acting, if the film has a storyline which really doesn't resonate with you whatsoever, it's very hard to me to think of the film as being cinematic. It really is.
That's really good.
You didn't record any of that?
No.
Markers.
So, is this shot cinematic? Do you think this shot is cinematic? It's really bad lighting above me, and it's really flat. Outside, you can't see anything because the windows are blown out. The location itself isn't particularly that exciting. But if I was to just pan over here to this person here, the shot suddenly becomes a lot more interesting.
It's cinematic. Anything with me is cinematic.
Because we have a cocky person on camera, it becomes a lot more interesting. Obviously, I'm not cocky, so everything's fine. But as soon as I start engaging with this person here, it becomes a two-shot. And then if we were having a conversation...
If you just pan it slightly this way, just go that way. Just if you just tilt, if you just, a little bit more, just so I'm... And if you just back out a little. Now, this is what you call a cinematic masterpiece. Lesson over.
As you can see, she's not been to film school, and she thinks she's a cinematic masterpiece. But you have to say this shot is a lot more interesting because there's two people having a dialogue. But if I was to go and get rid of her because she's annoying, suddenly the shot is a lot less interesting. Anyway, that is another little lesson for you. Let's go back to her, let her say goodbye. Suddenly she can't talk, which is great. Anyway, next lesson. This is take number 2. Take number 2.
The battery's dead on this. Are you dead? You are. So before I asked you to name your favourite films, and I asked you to tell me if you feel they're cinematic or not, or rather, tell me the name of the best films ever. Are they cinematic? Now, I'm going to pull off a couple of names for you, and I want you in the comments to let me know, just as we're going along here, let me know if you think they're cinematic or not. And the first film is Shawshank Redemption. Do you think that film's cinematic? When I think of Shawshank Redemption, I think of lush production. I don't think of amazing camera work. I don't think of incredible lighting. I don't specifically think of it as being cinematic per se, but I do think of it as being epic in scope. And that really comes down to the story. It doesn't look particularly incredible. It doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look like the Batman, for example. But it does feel cinematic. So in the comments, what do you think? Is that good cinematic? Or is that bad cinematic? Or is that not even cinematic? Let me know in the comments now. The next film is Star Wars. Is that cinematic? Now, whether you think it's one of the best films of all time or not is up for debate. And I'm not going to sit here and debate whether Star Wars is one of the best films of all time or not, because quite frankly, I've got better things to do with my time. But let's just pretend it is. Is Star Wars cinematic? In the comments, let me know. It's shot decently well. There's some really nice outdoor shots. They shot in particular film stock back in those days. So the idea of color grading wasn't really a thing per se. But it looks good. But would you call it cinematic? Because again, I think it's an epic film. I think it looks good for what it needs to be. Whether or not it's cinematic is, again, down to your own interpretation. I think it is cinematic. So again, in the comments, let me know. Citizen Kane. Now, many people have maybe not seen this film. If you have seen this film, do you think it's cinematic? Do you think it's not cinematic? I think it's one of the best looking films ever made. But it's black and white. But it's all drenched in shadows. But is it cinematic? Is Citizen Kane cinematic? Let me know in the comments. Okay, let's go for a slam dunk here. The Godfather.
Don't ask me about my business, Kate.
Is it true?
Don't ask me about my business.
No.
Now, The Godfather was shot by incredibly legendary cinematographer Gordon Willis, who also shot these amazing scenes from the film Manhattan by Woody Allen. So I'm going to put it out there and say this is a slam dunk. This is definitely a cinematic looking film. And if you look at the scope of the film, now I'm not just talking about the runtime. The runtime is obviously outrageously long. I think it's 2.5 hours to 3 hours long for Godfather 1, that is. And that is, in a way, cinematic. But, you know, there are films that are 2 hours long that are also cinematic. So the runtime for me is not really relevant in this particular topic. So, in the comments, do you think The Godfather 1 is cinematic? And let's go for one last film, shall we? Let's go for Christopher Nolan's masterpiece, Memento. Is that cinematic? Now, it was shot by the same DP he's used on many occasions, Wally Pfizer. And we're not talking about an outrageous budget here. The film was shot for between $5 to $9 million, which back in 2000 wasn't too bad because a lot of independent films were shot for around about that amount of money. But if you think about the scope and the scale of Interstellar and the amount of money that cost in comparison to Memento, do you think that Memento is cinematic? Do you look at it and think this is a cinematic film?
Okay, so what am I doing? Oh, I'm chasing this guy. No, he's chasing me.
Okay, so I don't know what the results are. I don't know what you guys put in the comments. I'm going to guess that on a lot of those films you said yes. I'm going to even guess that you said on Memento you said yes. Now, for me personally, I think they're all cinematic. All those films I mentioned are all fantastic films. They have incredible storylines, first and foremost, incredible acting, incredible cinematography, and more than anything, they come together as a cohesive piece of work. So what about this? Is this cinematic enough for you? Do you feel like this is everything you dreamed of? When you think about filmmaking, is this shot the perfect example of cinematic? Or, again, does it need a bit of context? Does me talking here in the shadows actually provide you with any sort of enjoyment? I'm sure you do feel some sort of enjoyment because you're still watching, but does it give you the drama? Because for me, I know it's my YouTube video, but I'm not feeling the drama. Let's go to another shot. So in this video, I've just been bashing film, and something feels a little bit disingenuous about that, because if I didn't care about film, then I wouldn't be talking about film. I wouldn't have a channel dedicated to film. So obviously I love film. Obviously I love the idea of film. I love cinematic films. Of course I love cinematic films. Now, in this video, I praise the use of digital cameras and how easy it is to shoot films with digital cameras. But there could be a problem. Is this term cinematic being used inappropriately because of digital cameras? Are you one of these people like me who thinks that vinyl sounds better than MP3s or CDs or any other method you can use to play music? Or are you more new school? Do you think that's a pretty outdated concept? Because I can't sit here and confidently tell you, or I don't think anyone can sit here and confidently tell you why vinyl sounds better than CD or MP3s or on your phone. There's actually no proof to conclusively prove that is a fact. In fact, it probably sounds worse, but it is analog and it does have that tangible feeling to it. When you listen to music on your phone or if on an MP3 or on your PlayStation or whatever you listen to music on, it doesn't feel like you're visibly touching the music. I remember when I used to go shopping with my older brother and he used to take me vinyl shopping. And when you purchase that vinyl and you play it in the machine on the vinyl player, it always had this rich feeling to it. Now, people say the same thing about film. If you speak to Nolan or if you speak to Tarantino or Paul Thomas Anderson, they are great advocates for shooting on film. Even the most recent Oscar frontrunner, The Brutalist, the director Brady Corbett, has been very vocal in his support for shooting on film. He truly believes that this is a medium which should not go out of business.
Listen, DCPs it's like a giant laptop. And it's no surprise that images, when they look like that, I don't think viewers are, encouraged to get off their couch because they can experience a smaller version of that at home.
Now, I'm a little bit different when it comes to shooting on film. Now, I've never personally shot on film myself. I've shot all my films on digital. So it's very easy for me to sit here and to tell you that shooting on digital is better than shooting on film. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say it's better than, but what I will say is that things move on. Things actively move on. Now, the problem with me saying that comes at a cost. And the reason is I'm sitting here and I'm saying that cinematic is maybe a lost concept. I'm saying that maybe things aren't cinematic anymore and the word is being used too much. However, I'm also sitting here and I'm advocating for the use of digital filmmaking, which is a complete contradiction. Because if you think about it, the art of making film in itself is in the phrase film. Film is a physical product. It's also a final vision of someone's narrative or non-narrative work. It's a film, but it's also physically film. So, and there we have the problem, because back when they could only shoot on film and they couldn't shoot on digital, I said before, it'd be very much easy now to shoot a Steadicam shot with digital because you don't have to keep stopping every 15, 20 minutes to reload the film. So yeah, it's made life a lot easier. But what that also has done is allowed filmmakers, much like myself and others, to just go out and make films, which is absolutely incredible. It's incredible. I remember being a kid and thinking I could never, ever make a film. Now, I'm literally making a film now. Now, I'm not calling my YouTube video a film, technically. I actually am in the midst of making a new film. But we won't talk about that. It's not really what we're here to talk about. But the point I'm trying to make here is that digital now allows you the freedom of just getting out there and making a film. You don't need to buy film stock and have it processed and handle it in a certain specific kind of way and then have it edited and cut physically. You can now literally pick up a camera, digitally film it, go onto your laptop or to your desktop and edit the film, color grade it, and you have a finished film. It's as simple as that. What that also means is that you have a lot of people who can't make film, making film. And what that also means, it's being diluted. The product is being diluted. And what that finally means, and this is the most important point, it means that the craft and the care that was taken to make a natural, physical film has been lost. Now you can do 1 million takes. Now you can put a camera wherever you like. You can get your iPhone, and if you want a quick shot, you can use this in a film. You can get a quick shot from your iPhone. Maybe you want a quick low-down shot in the corner of the room. Your iPhone's good enough to quickly get that shot of someone's foot, for example, and you can actually put that into your grading software, whatever you may use, and grade it to look like the rest of your footage that's shot on an Arri camera or an Alexa. So the process of filmmaking now is a lot easier. But with that comes mistakes. With that comes what I spoke about before, which is Netflix quality, where people are rushing. The lighting's just a little bit too clean. The end product is a little bit too plastic. The craft of sitting down and having a gourmet meal that's been prepared by the greatest hands in Paris, that art has been lost. Now, I'm not saying that a filmmaker like, let's talk about the typical names, your Villeneuves, your Nolans, your Tarantinos. I'm not saying they are rushing films. I'm not saying that at all. And I'm not saying also that other filmmakers who maybe are not as well known are rushing films. There are still great filmmakers out there. But what it allows people to do now is to rush the art of filmmaking. And that means the product, by way of extension, is now more diluted. And thusly, the quality is a lot less. So think about your favorite restaurant. Think about the best meal you've ever had when it was prepared with love and care. And then, for example, you have McDonald's, where if you just want your quick fix, McDonald's is fantastic. It's all kind of chain-made food. You have your processed meat, you have your processed bread, and then it goes to the processed machine, and then you have your processed staff members, and all doing the exact same thing, the same dollop of ketchup, the same sized meat. Everything is processed. And of course, that leads to consistency, but the consistency isn't good. It's bad consistency. Now, don't sue me, McDonald's. I'm not saying your consistency is bad. What I'm saying is there's no love and care placed upon your food. And it's the same with filmmaking. If you can make films so easily by just getting your digital camera and going out there, shooting with natural daylight or using lights or whatever you want to use, there's going to be a lack of care in that. And again, you can switch on Netflix and you can see exactly what I mean. Again, please don't sue me, Netflix, but you guys know exactly what I'm talking about.
Along the way, I fell in love with digital video. And now I love digital video. And I'm through with film.
You're moving to digital video?
Yeah.
Why?
Huge amount of reasons. Even though I love film, it's a dinosaur, and everything about it is a dinosaur, and it's soon to be gone pretty much forever. It happened in sound first. Tape, analog is so gone, you can't even get a roll of tape, hardly. And everything's digital. The same thing with image.
The photochemical process,
A dinosaur, dead. Completely ridiculous.
ridiculous.
Yeah, it scratches, it breaks, it's dirty, nothing but dirt on it, and no two prints are the same. It's a nightmare. You can hear the projectors chattering. It's a nightmare.
You're not a cinema romantic.
I just love cinema. I love it, but I don't want to go there anymore.
I think now is a really relevant time to take into account the recent passing of an incredible director by the name of David Lynch. I have not on my socials or on my YouTube channel mentioned David Lynch very much. He's not a director that resonates with me personally. Having said that, one of my films that I made back in 2019 called Palindrome was very heavily influenced by Mulholland Drive. And I do love Elephant Man, and I've not seen many of his films, to be honest with you. I've seen Blue Velvet, and I think I've seen Nicolas Cage film, which name I can't remember. But as a filmmaker, he's one of the most important filmmakers ever, and I can acknowledge that. He's not one of my favorite directors ever, but I can acknowledge that he's one of the greatest filmmakers and most important filmmakers ever. Not just because of his films as well, just because of who he is and who he was as a person. You know, I used to love watching his interviews. Just seemed like a really honest, down to earth, innocent kind of man. And relating that to the subject of this video, some of his films look incredible. Blue Velvet, for example, looks fantastic. It really does. But when I look at a film like Mulholland Drive, I don't consider it to be beautiful. I consider it to be shot, and I think he has spoken about this, and I will hopefully be able to put some footage onto this, of him talking about how the film is shot to look the way it is on purpose. Because that's what he did. He made sure that his art serviced his art. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, if I was to shoot a film today, if I was to shoot a rom-com, and had the kind of lighting I'm using now to elevate the plot, I would be making a really bad rom-com, because there's no way a rom-com should be shadowy and have a film noir-esque grates at the back and kind of bring you into a sense of drama. Like, that's not what rom-coms should do. Rom-coms should be brightly lit. This light that I have right here should be right in front of me, and my whole face should be in shot. What I mean by the idea of art for art is doing the right things at the right moments. Now, there's nothing wrong with a juxtaposition. Don't get me wrong. You can have juxtaposition. You can have a rom-com that is lit like this. I mean, I personally wouldn't. I think it really takes you away from the idea of something being funny and being comical. I don't think this is comical or funny. I think this is more dramatic, this harsh light. But you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that, because art essentially is open to all sorts of interpretations. But I think in this instance, with Mulholland Drive specifically, he was going for that kind of soapy, kind of brightly lit, dreamy kind of aesthetics. And I think if you look at the film, there are two lighting schemes used. There's one that he uses, and if you've not seen the film, this will be a spoiler alert. There's one that he uses for the dream sequence, which covers most of the film, and there's one that he uses for the more gritty sequences. So he really knew exactly what he was doing there. I think Mulholland Drive and David Lynch is a classic example of someone who is cinematic, of a film that is cinematic, a film that is using the language of film to its advantage. There's nothing worse than something that looks fantastic and bores the hell out of you because the storyline's just not there. That's really the era that we're in now. We're in the era where things all look glossy and wonderful, but they really suck. And I'm not going to blame specifically one or two things. I think there's a few things to blame for this. I think the fact that you can shoot something on your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever phone you have is a problem, for sure. Because people don't know what lighting is. People don't know what storylines are. Storylines now are TikTok posts, which, are meant to get to the point within the first 2 seconds. That is not really what film and storytelling is all about. And the idea also of cinema has been, or cinematic has been, ruined by this idea of Netflix. Now, I'm not going to blame Netflix specifically, but let's just use Netflix as a placeholder for streaming services. But I do want to pick on Netflix exclusively, because if you go and scroll through your Netflix right now, I can guarantee you are going to scroll through a bunch of films, TV shows that look exactly the same. The lighting looks exactly the same. The text looks exactly the same. The posters look exactly the same. Everything is uniformed. It has that Netflix look to it, which is not cinematic at all. But to someone who's maybe 13 years old, just growing up and watching Netflix, that's now your idea of cinematic. That is your idea of cinematic. And who are we to say what is cinematic and what is not? I'm not 13. So, when I grow up and I'm a 13-year-old and now I'm 30, I'm going to think cinematic is Netflix. That's what's going to happen. And there's nothing wrong with that. There really is nothing wrong with that. I mean, a film back in 1939 that's black and white, that looks great with its harsh shadows, all brought in from German Expressionism. I'm going to see a film in the 60s that's brightly lit, your Bonnie and Clydes, and I'm going to think, this is not cinematic, this is trash. So, things do change. Taste do change. Having said that, I can look at something like Bonnie and Clyde, which is, a 60s film. I can look at something from the 20s, and I can look at something from the 70s or 80s and 90s, and I instantly go, that looks fantastic. When I look at a Netflix show, I just go, that looks cheap and trash. So I think there is a problem there. And again, art is subjective, but I do think we have to have standards. I do think if we're measuring everything by, for example, The Godfather, then a Netflix show is simply falling short. And not by a small amount, by a large amount. I mean, what are we doing here? 1000%. I love film. But that feeling when you love something and you love it so much that it becomes a problem. It becomes toxic. Me and film have a very toxic relationship. So you're probably asking, why keep making film then? What's the point? I mean, if film is now just bad, Marcus, well, why keep making film? And that's a great question. Why should anyone keep making film? Why should anyone bother? If you can now become famous from TikTok and Instagram, and if you can now create cinematic images on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and wherever you like, then what is the point of film? Is film an outdated concept? Well, I would say yes. I'd say film is an outdated concept. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't make films. I'm not saying people should stop making films. That's not what I'm saying. I love film and I want film to exist forever. But we have to admit, we are in a very crucial time where the art of filmmaking and the consumption of films has come to an all-time low. Now, I don't mean that the box offices are down. They are down. There are some figures to support that as well. That's not what we're talking about, though. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how people consume their film. Now, I own a company, and what we do is that we give actors work in film. So, we're an agency. I should have said that at the beginning. We're an agency. So we get people work in film. What I've seen over the past 6 months is a huge rise in vertical dramas. This industry is taken over, believe me. This is a Jamaican patty.
Okay.
It's made by Jamaicans in Cambridge. Enjoy. Is it good? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Hey, Jamaican food. Unbeatable. I'm not even in the video. I'm
Big
unbeatable.
up Jamaica.
Big. So you're probably wondering what vertical dramas are. So let me tell you what vertical dramas are. They are this.
Within the walls of a medieval Chinese castle, actor Zhu Jian is busy shaking up the world's second largest film industry. But it's not for cinema screens. Grandma's Moon is a microdrama. The show is vertically shot, and the minute-long episodes are written to keep millions of viewers hooked to their phone screens.
过去那些拍广告的、拍宣传片的、拍微电影的那些人，这个短剧一起来以后，他们纷纷都转到这一行了，所以大家都比较熟悉，比较熟悉以后，很快有角色了，就直接就联系了。
They are dramas that are shot vertically for the consumption on mobile phones. And in the past 2 years, they have made over $5 billion. Now, that's just in the Chinese market. And I can see them slowly transitioning to the US and to the UK. It's predicted that they're going to make $13 billion by 2027. So is this the future? Are vertical dramas the future? Well, I can absolutely see that being the case because most people now watch films on their tablets or on their mobile phones or on their laptops. No one's now going to the cinema to watch Netflix or to watch their latest film. They'll wait until it comes out on streaming and they'll watch it on their phone. No one cares. No one actually cares about going to the cinema.
Is booming. A third-party analysis showed it was valued at 37 billion yuan in 2023 and is forecast to grow to 100 billion yuan by 2027. But how do the producers make money? The first episodes of microdramas are often free on social media, but to finish watching one like Grand One's Moon, which has 64 clips, you may need to pay. By ending segments with dramatic reveals, producers make frequent plot turns to lure viewers into paying for the next episode.
每隔这么几集，它要有一个情节的反转，在这个情节的反转的时候，它设定叫你充值，你这充值以后，你才能继续往下看。也就是在你看到正有劲儿、正吸引你的时候。哎，在你欲罢不能的时候，停了，充钱，它就是这样一种方式来生存的吧。
The trend is spreading overseas in countries like the US. 3 major Chinese microdrama apps were downloaded 30 million times across Apple's App Store and Google Play in the first quarter of 2024.
So, we're asking 2 questions here. I love the name of my channel. Cinema is dying. It says everything about my mentality right now and possibly the mentality of most people who don't go to the cinema. Now, I've been to the cinema in the past year, maybe 3 times, which is a real shame because I used to love going to the cinema every Friday. And for a period there, I was doing so. But my faith in film and cinema is at an all-time low, and I don't fancy spending 2 to 3 hours at my local cinema and spending maybe £30, which is about $35 onwards, on cinema when I'm being disappointed so many times by so many films. There's so many film critics who are giving fake reviews to suggest the film is good when it's not. There's so many aggregators like Rotten Tomato who are aggregating poor scores that are not real. And ultimately, my eyes, which are not yet blind despite my glasses, can see that these films are terrible. Why should I spend $35 and 3 hours of my day going to the cinema? So my faith is at an all-time low. But with a vertical drama, you really don't have to do anything. You just sit on your bed or on your couch or whatever you feel like, and you look at your phone and you watch your vertical drama. Now, these vertical dramas are typically between 1 to 2 minutes per episode, and they get the attention going because the scripts are literally soap opera dramas. And if you can't get hooked by a soap opera drama, then what kind of a human being are you? So let's just go through this. You can sit at home now and be entertained on your phone. You don't need Netflix. You can watch a vertical drama. It's the same. It's been shot in the same format as your phone, so you don't have to turn your phone sideways. You can, most TikTok videos and most Instagram videos are all portrait. So now you have a format and now you have a genre which caters to your very need. Now, I'm going to go back to the idea of being a 13-year-old or 15-year-old or 10-year-old in modern day 2025. You probably think that everything is portrait. You probably think to yourself, why the hell would I watch something in landscape when I can see it in portrait? My TikTok videos in portrait, my Instagram videos in portrait. I love portrait. If you look at shorts on YouTube, portrait. Everything is now going the way of portrait. So if you have a vertical drama that ticks all the boxes, you have your hot young female lead, you have your hot male lead, they're in love, there's wolves, there's Draculas, there's all sorts of weird stuff going on. And you are entertained. Well, then there is no debate. You're going to watch your vertical drama. And in 20 years' time, when you're my age, you're going to be like, why are you watching the old school film in landscape? It's a bit like the idea of 4:3. 4:3 used to be the common practice for most films. And I say that purely because most films used to be on TV sets, anywhere between the 50s to even the 90s, everything would be 4:3. So when I see a film now, like, Robert Edgers loves making films 4:3. I personally, my last film was 4:3. They're a choice. They are strong choices. They're not bad choices, but they certainly are strong choices. And they're a little bit, and I'm going to say this about myself as well, they're a little bit wanky. Like, you don't need to make your film 4:3. And I've spoken about aspect ratios before on this channel. I'm not going to do it again, don't worry. But I do think the idea of shooting in 4:3 or 2:3:5 or 16:9 or 1, whatever you want to shoot in, 1:2, whatever the hell it is, it's all quite wanky. Ultimately, it's the same thing as cinematic. It doesn't mean anything. If your storyline is shite and your aspect ratio is gorgeous or your film looks gorgeous, it doesn't really matter what aspect ratio you shoot on. So with the most recent film, Nosferatu, which I think is in 4:3, I could be wrong, but I know The Lighthouse was in 4:3. Why? Now, people will say it's to do with the idea of, feeling trapped and feeling isolated in a lighthouse. I get it. I do get it. It will add to that sense of dread and sense of feeling claustrophobic. I get it to a degree. But if you just make a damn good film with good writing, good acting, you're going to feel claustrophobic anyway. One of my most claustrophobic experiences while watching a film is from the film Irreversible by Gaspar Noé, which I wanted to stop. Another film that he made, which I also wanted to stop and I felt really claustrophobic, was Climax. Both of these films are not 4:3. So again, you can do these little tricks to add to the nostalgic feeling of a film or to the claustrophobia or to the emotion or whatever you like. It all adds up, doesn't it? But at the end of the day, if you write a good story, if you act the film well, if you direct the film well, guess what? You might actually get the point across. Just saying. So, I'm part of the problem. You're part of the problem. Everyone's part of the problem. How do we fix this problem? It's the idea of change. People don't like change. People prefer to live with comfort. And change is typically uncomfortable, or eventually becomes uncomfortable. But what if change in the short term is uncomfortable, but in the long term is beneficial? Would that not be better for everyone concerned? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not the first YouTuber to talk about the term cinematic and discuss what its actual meaning is. There's been many of us before. I think one of the best ones comes from the YouTuber Patrick J. Williams, who discusses it in great length. And if you've not seen his video, please do look into it. So yeah, we're in a love-hate relationship right now. Me and film, we really are having issues. But I don't know. I mean, I don't like the idea of toxic relationships. I think they can be avoided, and I think they should be avoided. But at the same time, when I think back to some of the most treasured relationships in my life, they've come from a place of love and hate. Now, let's take the two things away from each other. Let's take the way of toxic or toxicity away from the idea of love and hate. Now, I'm sure you guys have parents who you love and hate at the same time. I'm sure you have partners who you love and hate and friends who you love and hate. And I typically find when you're most honest and when you're most vulnerable is around those type of people. They bring out the best and the worst in you. They make you feel great and they can make you feel kind of crap as well. And that's how film makes me feel. It makes me feel good and it makes me feel bad at the same time. So when I hear the expression cinematic, I'm not going to lie, it makes me slightly mad because I feel like it's being misused. It's being used by people who don't even know what it means. They think it means one thing, but it means something else. And I feel like I'm defending film. It makes me closer to film when you've been in those relationships where the person says, get away from that person. They're no good for you. That person's bad for you. And then you get close to the person. It's weird, right? But that is typically how I feel about film. When people use the word cinematic and they don't even know what they're talking about, well, I'm not going to lie. I feel like I need to come out and defend film. I need to come out and say that you don't know what you're saying. Because film is not what you say it is. It is what it is. Film is not this idea of cinema being a LUT or, placing a light somewhere or a really long Steadicam shot. That isn't film. Film for me is exactly what I've been talking about. It's all the components that make film: music, lighting, the camera work, the angles, the acting, the script, the producer, the production designer, every certain person, the clapperboard person, every single person who comes together to make a film. That is what film is. It's not cinematic LUT or that shot's cinematic. Have you seen that film? It's cinematic. Did you see that YouTube video? It's cinematic. Did you see the TikTok video where the person went up the mountain and did a little dance? That was cinematic. No, it's not. It's stupid. It's stupid and it's pathetic. Let's get back to what cinema really is. It's this.